And we have two women on the panel who are in perhaps the most competitive businesses out there, entertainment and media and sports. And they're at a high level in those industries. I would just believe that persistence had to be a part of your DNA in getting to where you've gotten. And let's start with Jen. How has that worked for you?
Yeah, when I was coming out of law school, had an opportunity to go work at the NFL. When all of my other friends were sort of, I like to say it was that sheep mentality when you're in law school that, oh, I must do the on-campus interviewing because everyone else is. I must apply for the jobs with the big firms because that's the place to make the money and that's where I should be. I knew I never really wanted to work for a big firm, but I had this opportunity. I knew I wanted to work in sports, and it was a bit of a risk, but I did it. There were times where I looked back and said, did I do the right thing? Because here's everybody else making a ton of money. I'm making nothing at the NFL. And the attorneys I worked with said to me, you really need to go to a firm or a DA's office and really hone your skills as a lawyer. Because if you want to work in sports, you've got to have a skill that will help market you. You can't just say, well, I know some people at the NFL and I've worked for them for a couple of years and, hire me. It's not going to work. And there wasn't room for growth there for me unless I had practiced as a lawyer. So I took that advice and I went into the law firm world. And at that point, 2 years out of law school, it was tough to go back to that big firm world. They didn't know what to do with the experience I had at the NFL, as great as it was. So I had to start out at a smaller firm and doing securities litigation. It was as far from sports as I could be. Wasn't where I wanted to be, but I was learning how to really be a lawyer, how to counsel my clients, how to advocate on their behalf. I had the opportunity to do numerous arbitration hearings and to go before judges and to argue cases. And that experience took me eventually to bigger and bigger firms until one day I woke up and said, well, I'm exactly where I didn't want to be. I didn't want to be working for a big firm, and I'm not in sports, but those years that I was working at the firms, I always knew what my end goal was, and that was to get back into sports. So I did everything I could to maintain my network of contacts, to attend sports lawyers conferences, to continue to stay up to date on what was going on in sports and to stay relevant in what was happening, and to be genuine about working my network of contacts. And I don't mean just getting as many business cards as you can, but truly cultivating relationships with people. And the attorneys and the people that I worked with at the NFL are some of my best friends today. I mean, they were true relationships that were cultivated. They weren't just, hey, can you help me out? I mean, and that's what networking is, and at a young age, you don't recognize it or realize it, but it's very important, and it's very important for your career to be genuine about it. So it was that persistence and never really giving up on what my dream was of getting back into sports, and never really changing who I was as a person and staying true to who I was and to those relationships. And I can honestly say that every job I've had in sports since then has really come as a result of my relationships with people. I've never had to really go out and apply for one. I've had people come to me and bring opportunities my way. And for that, I am eternally grateful, because if it wasn't for those friends and those people that I've worked with before, I wouldn't be where I am today. And when this opportunity came to me to be CEO of a league, I thought, could I really do that? I'm a lawyer. I've always identified myself as a lawyer, but there were people who saw something in me that I maybe didn't recognize in myself and the abilities that I've had. And was it a risk taking this job? Absolutely. Are we an unstable league? Yes, we are. Is it a challenge? Yes, it is. But is it incredibly rewarding to me? Most definitely. And the one thing I would say is don't ever be afraid to take on a challenge. Don't ever be afraid to take on that risk. I am not a risk, I'm a risk-adverse person by nature, but I have learned in my career to take on some risk and to take on those challenges because you can only grow and you can only go up. You can only do positive things. If you start out at the top, there's only one place to go. But if you start out at the bottom and you take as many opportunities as you can to learn and to grow as a person personally and professionally, and never give up on your dreams, and take those calculated risks. You'll always be successful.
Thanks, Jen. Angel, in the entertainment industry, it's just impossible to get in, first of all. And number two, it's impossible, so I use the word impossible loosely. Of course, I don't believe that. But it takes persistence. It takes a great deal of persistence to be acknowledged for your talents. As a woman in a male-dominated industry, just like Jen succeeded in a male-dominated industry, how has persistence played a role for you?
Well, there's a few things actually. I've always been a go-getter and risk taker. Like, I like to do things that make me nervous. When you step out your comfort zone, you learn the most from those. And when I started Concrete Loop, it was 2005, and about 5 years ago, I was actually sitting in the same space as many of the students here. I was wondering, should I take it, to the next level? Should I continue doing this, or continue with my art history degree? And with entertainment, with Concrete Loop, a lot of the celebrities were already reading the website, and I didn't realize it. I was living in Jacksonville, North Carolina. It's a country town down in North Carolina, and no one really is into celebrities. So for me to get acknowledgments from, there's a model named Iman, and this is when MySpace was big, and everyone had MySpace blogs, and she was talking about Concrete Loop, and my brother told me, and I'm like, wait, she knows what Concrete Loop is? I'm in Jacksonville. How do they know where I'm at? And it kind of progressed from there. And every time I would go to events out of state in New York or Los Angeles, people already assumed I lived there. So I kind of use that as my advantage. I lied a little bit. I'm like, yeah, we have offices over here, and my office is over there. And you got to get in where you fit in, as I like to say. And it kind of works too. And one story I like to tell is with Kanye West. He invited me to a listening party a couple years ago. And, big swanky event, a lot of celebrities there having fun, partying and whatnot. I was definitely not into that environment. It was just a lot going on. I was by myself. I flew from the East Coast to the West Coast to go to the event. And I'm like, I don't have any exclusive content for my website, so I got to figure out a way to get to Kanye West. So I told his assistant, I'm like, yo, Kanye told me to meet him at his studio tomorrow for an exclusive interview. And he was like, are you sure, he set this up with you? I'm like, yeah, Kanye didn't tell me anything. I just made it up, I'm like, yeah. He was like, yeah, he's going to be in the studio. I overheard him talking to someone saying he's going to be in the studio. So I'm like, okay, yeah. Yeah, he told me he's going to be in the studio. So he's like, okay, yeah, come by around 3 o'clock. We'll be in there. So yeah, I was in the studio with Kanye. He was working on 808s and Heartbreaks. I got exclusive background photos, an interview, and the whole 9 yards. And I always say, take that extra risk. And I learned that, on my end, always take a risk, because you never know what's going to happen. They can say no, okay, that's cool. But if they say yes, imagine how much more you can get out of it.
Interesting. And that's how it's done.